Hello, hot and heavy listeners. I am doing this little disclaimer before the episode starts because, full disclosure, I have been trying to work with different microphone setups for when I record this podcast just to be a bit more comfortable. I record from home, so it's a little bit difficult to find a position to record in, especially if I'm not home alone and I need a quiet space. Anyway, you don't need to know all of that. But in this recording, I set up my mic in a different way, which apparently caused me to somehow keep bumping either my microphone or a wire. I don't know what it is, but as I was listening to it, I'm like, what the hell is that sound? So I just wanted to warn you that apparently I kept bumping something and you can hear it in the recording. I don't think it ruins the experience that much. I'm hoping it sounds worse to me than it will to you, but I just wanted to let you guys know that it's there and but still listen, please. And I will work on my microphone setup to make sure that doesn't happen again. Thank you so much for listening, and let's start the episode. Hello and welcome to Hot and Heavy, the Elaine Bennis podcast. I'm your host, Shivani Desai. Today I'll be talking about Season 5, Episode 7, The Non-Fat Yogurt. Hello everyone. I hope everyone's doing well. I'm all right. I can't complain. I'm loving the weather. I know, weather banter, how original, but this is the best I got today. The weather has definitely turned to fall. The seasons have changed. It's beautiful fall weather here in Colorado, and I'm just loving it. It's sweater weather, and I'm wearing a sweater today. All right, so let's get into this episode. The synopsis for the non-fat yogurt is as follows. Kramer's investment in a non-fat yogurt shop is lost when Jerry and Elaine prove that it's not so non-fat after all. Jerry swears in front of a neighbor's boy. George pretends to nudge someone to avoid talking to a childhood nemesis, Lloyd Braun, who is now working for the mayor of New York. Elaine's relationship with Lloyd is compromised by a political suggestion made by Frank Costanza. This episode was written by Larry David. All right, before we get into the episode, I have to point out how terribly this is written, this synopsis. I mean, George pretends to nudge someone or Jerry. We could have just said Jerry. And then Elaine's relationship is compromised with Lloyd by a political suggestion made by Frank Costanza. What? Did this person even watch the episode? Frank liked the idea, but Elaine made the suggestion. Anyway, I've talked about how these synopsis writers really phone it in for this DVD set. All right, the first scene, we are in the yogurt shop. Jerry and Elaine and George are all enjoying some frozen yogurt. I mean, really enjoying it. Elaine's has real blueberries in it. Jerry's is a coffee flavor with ground up beans in the yogurt. Elaine tastes it and says, "Que rico, suave." And the best part is that it's non-fat. George can't believe it. How can this be non-fat? It's too good. Elaine offers George a taste of her frozen yogurt, but he accuses her offer as a way to taste his. She says, "No, I don't want to taste yours." But he doesn't believe her. She just says, "You know what? Let's just forget it." Jerry mentions how Kramer is going to clean up because he invested in the shop. And he just can't get over it. He just says, "This yogurt is so fucking good." Well, it's bleeped out, but explicit alert, I'm going to say the real word. Oops. Just as Jerry curses, his neighbor walks by with her young son, and she says, "Jerry? Oh, I'm sorry." They get up to leave, but Elaine wants a little bit more yogurt, so she goes back to the counter. George sees an old friend walk in, Lloyd Braun. Oh, he's less than thrilled to see him. He's a big advisor to Mayor Dinkins. He thinks he's so cool. Lloyd sees him. "Hey, George. Hey, Lloyd." And Lloyd just, first thing he says, "So I hear you're living back at home or something?" Just the worst possible thing your nemesis can point out, like the thing you are so ashamed of. But George, of course, lies and says, yeah, there was a fire in my apartment. Lloyd mentions how there are some major chicks in this place, and George gently elbows Jerry and rolls his eyes at Lloyd. Well, Lloyd catches him and asks, is there something wrong with your arm? George, of course, yes-ands this, I will use an improv term, and says, he bumped it on a desk and now it moves involuntarily. And then George keeps chatting with Lloyd, jutting his elbow out to the side the entire time. Lloyd notices a doll approaching, and it's Elaine. George introduces them. Nice to meet you too. Elaine's clearly as smitten as Lloyd is with her. He says, I'm sorry, I have to go now. He says goodbye and exits. Elaine is just overcome. Boy, he's really cute, isn't he? He's a jerk. They exit with George still moving his arm. He's gone, George. All right. My take on this scene, we get such a fun George and Elaine moment right at the top, how irritating George is. He cannot believe anyone would offer something without wanting something in return. I love the look on her face, on Elaine's face, when she says, you know what, let's just forget it. Okay, this is really small, but it irks me that she says test taste instead of taste test. I don't know if any of you noticed that when she hears about the real ground up coffee beans in the coffee frozen yogurt. She's like, well, let me test taste that. And yes, I mean, can you believe it? I'm irritated with JLD and her delivery. Alert the media. It has happened. And we get adorable, flirty Elaine at the end of the scene when she's introduced to Lloyd. So cute. So much physicality at the end of this scene for JLD to do. It starts with the face as she's approaching from getting more yogurt. That look in her eye when she sees Lloyd, it just says it all. You can tell she's into this. And then the almost like curtsy handshake and the sing-songy, nice to meet you too. It's all just so cute. And then after Lloyd leaves, her exhale and sort of lunge to emphasize how cute she thinks he is. It's just all vintage, lovely JLD. So yes, I might have gotten irritated with JLD, with the test taste, but she won me over at the end with just how cute she was as flirty Elaine. This is a great opening scene. Once again, we are treated to a lot of information coming out in a very natural, unforced way, and it's not an easy thing to do, but I really think Larry David has a knack for this, like getting exposition, all the information out, but not too expositionally, which is to say, like, he's not just stating things that we need to know for the episode. It's just done very naturally. Like in this scene, the entire episode is set up from the yogurt and how it's non-fat. Kramer's an investor. Jerry swears in front of a kid. George's lie about his arm spasm. And Lloyd being taken by Elaine. So it's a lot of shit to get out, but it's done so beautifully. All right, next we're at Jerry's apartment. Kramer is excited about how well the shop is doing and that he invested in it because he tasted it. Elaine buzzes. Jerry is excited about a bunch of ad-libbed material from his last set, and he taped it. Elaine enters. She's kind of nursing a tooth. She's got her finger on one of her teeth and said that she bit down on the fork. Hard to believe that happens with so much biting experience. Kramer walks by and has a physical reaction to something as he's looking at Elaine. She asks, what? You're getting heavy. What? Well, it looks like you put on 10 pounds. Jerry stands up. Kramer? Then he points out that Jerry's looking a little chunky as well. Well, in a panic, Elaine asks Jerry, where's your bathroom scale? Well, duh, it's in the bathroom. They run to the bathroom. We hear that Elaine has gained 7 pounds. Jerry's gained 8. They're so upset. They exit the bathroom. Elaine has a hand mirror and she's kind of looking at her face. I believe she's looking for double chins, the way she's kind of like pinching underneath her chin. She's horrified. She hasn't been doing anything different. Same exercises, no changes in her diet. Oh, but then Jerry thinks maybe it's the yogurt. Well, Kramer rebuts that. No way. It's not fat. Well, how else could this have happened? Kramer says maybe it's the Oreos. Elaine says, I don't eat Oreos. Which is so ridiculous. Come on, Elaine. And Kramer starts in on her. You don't eat Oreos. And then Kramer does an impression of her twisting and scraping the cream with her teeth. You're practically having sex with them. And Jerry's like, well, what about me? You're getting old. Jerry says, maybe your yogurt isn't so non-fat. Guess again, Tubby. Elaine says they need to figure this out. Is it non-fat or not? Jerry says there must be some sort of a lab that does that. Elaine's got it. She's going to call the Food and Drug Administration. And as she says this, she touches Jerry's midsection and kind of gives him a look. Ooh, feels puffy. Kramer says to Chubbs, a.k.a. Jerry, if the yogurt has fat in it, he will put himself on an all-yogurt diet for a week. Well, let's start the insanity. Giddy up. My take on this scene, oh, Kramer, we love how he just has no filter, don't we? Well, I do at least. It makes for great television. This scene contains one of my favorite moments of the entire series. Kramer doing his impression of Elaine eating Oreos and then saying she's practically having sex with them. It gets me every single time. No matter how many times I've seen this scene, I just laugh out loud. It is so funny, especially because we've seen Elaine do it. I believe I did point it out the first time we see Elaine eating Oreos at Jerry's house. It's just scraping all that cream off with her teeth. She's definitely got a system. So it just cracks me up when she's like, I don't eat Oreos. Like, what? Elaine's face when she pokes around Jerry's midsection is super funny too. And also, just wardrobe-wise, you can tell they deliberately had Jerry and Elaine sort of wear this loose-fit clothing. Like, when do we see Jerry without his shirt tucked in? And Elaine doesn't wear stuff like this big kind of button-down shirt. So I think that was very intentional. And I just have to point out, gaining 7 to 8 pounds is significant enough that they shouldn't be shocked. Your clothes would fit tighter for sure. I mean, maybe that is why they're wearing the loose-fitting clothing, but they should then know, like, yeah, everything's tight, so I have to wear this bigger shirt than I usually do. But I know it's for the purpose of the plot, but come on. For as vain as Jerry and Elaine are, if their clothes were snug, and of course it would have to be due to weight gain, their clothes not fitting, they would know well before Kramer points it out. The whole introduction of, let's call the Food and Drug Administration, take it to a lab, it's a bit broad. It's a little over the top, but in Seinfeld's hands, it really doesn't bother me. Because, I believe, again, due to their vanity, Jerry and Elaine would want to hold the party responsible for their unsightly weight gain, so it is believable. And I just want to point out for those of you out there who might be too young to remember the 90s or perhaps weren't even born in the 90s, the whole non-fat, fat-free craze was just that in the 90s. People were like, if you were dieting, you were obsessed with everything non-fat. Like everything has to be fat-free, fat-free. And it was a big deal. And it was so misleading. I think we know now better that just because something's fat-free doesn't mean it doesn't have high calories. So I just think this episode is such a great kind of snapshot of the time, especially in the 90s, where people were obsessed with fat-free things. It was just all over the place. It was the way the food industry got you to buy their product if, you were on a diet or you wanted to keep your weight down. It was a big old scam because, yeah, great, it's fat-free, but there's like 800 calories per serving. So that's not going to keep the weight off, guys. All right, next we're at the Costanza's house. George is napping and gets woken up by a whack to the forehead by his dad to talk about Tommy Toon. The doorbell rings and it's Lloyd Braun. George just slinks down in the couch, annoyed that he's there. Frank and Estelle are so excited to see him. George comes over to greet him and then has to keep up his arm injury, so he elbows Estelle so hard. Lloyd asks how his arm is doing. "What's the matter with your arm?" And tells Frank and Estelle about the involuntary spasm that George told him about. In fact, he mentioned it to the mayor and got George an appointment with an orthopedist that the mayor suggested. Oh, Frank and Estelle are so impressed, and they're in awe of the fact that the mayor discussed George with Lloyd. George lies and says, I've been to the doctor. They said there's nothing they can do. Well, Frank freaks out and says, do you know how good of a doctor this must be if the mayor knows him? All right, I'll go. And Lloyd will be very interested to hear the diagnosis. All right, moving on. We are back at Jerry's apartment. Elaine is on the phone with the FDA and she says that, yes, we'll come right down. Hangs up and tells Jerry that there's a lab who can analyze the frozen yogurt in Brooklyn. We have to drive there and it's $45. Jerry agrees and says, okay, well, let's go down to the yogurt shop and get a specimen. The neighbor, Mary, the mom of the kid who Jerry swore in front of, is at the door. And she is so mad at Jerry. Every other word out of her son's mouth is fuck, 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 fuck. Fake, 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 fake. You know what he asked me 5 minutes ago? Where's my fucking cupcake? Jerry apologizes again, and she says, he wants to be like you because you're a comedian. Maybe you can talk to him. Jerry said he'd be happy to. Before Mary leaves, Jerry stops her. So apparently it's Mary's husband who owns the yogurt shop. So Jerry asks, your husband's yogurt, is there any fat in it? And she says, no fucking way. Such a fantastic ending to a scene. So funny. Next, we're at the Costanza's house. Lloyd is on his way out saying goodbye to the Costanzas. Oh, it was good to see you, Lloyd. I mean, I don't know if Estelle could get any more smitten. Before he leaves, he turns and asks George about the gorgeous woman he saw him with. Oh, she's just a friend. Estelle chimes in. Oh, you must mean Elaine. Isn't she adorable? Lloyd asks George for her number. Lloyd, I really don't have it. Estelle pipes up again. She works at Pendant Publishing. Elaine Bennis. Well, Lloyd thanks her and leaves. Oh, that Lloyd Braun. He is something. All right, we're back at the yogurt shop. Newman is at a table with a bunch of postal workers telling a story about, I guess, yelling at an old woman during his shift, sending her to the back of the line, Granny. Jerry and Elaine enter. Hello, Newman. Newman is so excited. He's been waiting his whole life for something like this yogurt, and now it's finally here. The owner yells at Jerry, said he'd appreciate it if he'd stop using obscenities around his son. Jerry says it was an accident. I'm going to talk to him. Elaine orders a plain vanilla to go in a cup and asks, that doesn't have any fat in it. No, because she's on a special diet and she's not allowed to have any fat. Yeah, well, there's no fat. And then we hear Newman order another run of strawberry for me and my friends. And then laughs really hard. All right, next we're in Jerry's car. Elaine is telling him to hurry up. The yogurt isn't looking so good. Kramer says, well, they can't test it if it's melted. Oh, how do you know? Kramer says it changes the molecules. Oh, you don't know what you're talking about. Hey, fatso, I got a 90 in biology. I love the runner of Kramer calling Jerry fat in different ways. It makes me laugh every time. All right, next we're at the FDA lab. They enter and Elaine tells the scientist she called earlier about getting the yogurt tested. He gives her a form to fill out. She asks, does it matter if it's melted? No. They give Kramer an I told you so look. The scientist does let her know that it will take a couple days for the results. Kramer approaches a female, she's a chemist, on the other side of the room. Ooh, test tubes. Cool. Now, the actress who plays this chemist is Lisa Howell Houle, and her name is Cheryl in the episode. And she has done quite a bit of work. I'm doing this real time because I forgot to do it in my notes. But suffice it to say, she's done a lot of work. But the most interesting thing I think about her, sorry, Lisa Houle, is that she is married to the actor who plays Dr. Reston. So a couple who are both Seinfeld alums. Kind of cool. I think she's fine in this episode. I don't really have an opinion, unfortunately. It's mostly just Kramer kind of dominating every scene. I think she does a good job, though. I like her. Back to the scene, Jerry asks what the scientist is holding in his hands, and it turns out to be a vial of Rudy Giuliani's blood. They're doing a complete workup on it. Elaine's done with the form, and then we see the female chemist smitten with Kramer saying, it's really nice to meet you. He's all flirty. Pleasure was all mine. I gotta say, flirty Kramer is just creepy Kramer to me. It's not as charming as flirty Elaine, that's for sure. All right, next we're in Jerry's car. Jerry and Elaine insist that Kramer taking out that chemist is a conflict of interest. She's like the jury. She needs to be sequestered. Kramer insists, look, I'm not taking her out just to sway the decision. Well, the whole thing stinks, Jerry says. And Elaine agrees. It smells. It smells bad. It smells real bad. Well, that's enough. What? with the smells. My take, it's a super short scene, but I sort of love the moment at the end where Jerry takes Elaine down a notch. Like, hey, we don't need that many smells. All right, next we are in Jerry's apartment. George is telling Jerry about Lloyd setting up the doctor's appointment and that he's just trying to humiliate him, but that he has to go because if he doesn't, then Lloyd will find out. And Jerry doesn't think he can keep up. What, you have to go in and keep doing this with your arm? They're going to think you're a mental patient. George is like, that doesn't matter. Look, I can keep this up. Lloyd doesn't know what he's up against. My whole life is a lie. Elaine enters and she's very excited. Guess who called me? Ugh, George guesses it's Lloyd. We are going out tomorrow night. George instructs Elaine to lie about his arm because Lloyd is probably going to ask about it. Elaine refuses. She doesn't want to start out lying to the guy. Oh, so you're taking his side? Well, what if they get married or become a couple? We'll always have that between us. You're just going to be walking around jutting your arm out. Even you can't keep that up. And Jerry's like, I think he can. And you can see George appreciate the fact that Jerry's like, yeah, he can do it. The neighbor Mary arrives with her son, Matthew, so Jerry can talk to him. And he calls Jerry a funny fuck. Jerry brings him into the apartment to chat and says that, if he wants to become a comedian, he shouldn't curse like he did. And when he did it, it was an accident, and he hasn't done it since. The phone rings. Jerry gets up to answer it and gives Elaine and George in the kitchen a look like, how amazing was that speech? They both give him the approval gestures. Very good. Elaine tells George how Lloyd advises Dinkins on everything. He even tells him what soap to use. As Jerry's on the phone, Matthew finds the tape with Jerry's set and starts yanking the tape out with so much joy. Jerry rushes over. What the fuck are you doing, you little piece of shit? Elaine and George throw things all over the kitchen in their reaction to this. Oh, funny. My take on the scene. First of all, I love that they are showing Jerry and Elaine actively watching their diet and exercising. Like we see Jerry weighing his cereal. Elaine's just definitely worked out before she arrived at Jerry's apartment. They want to lose that non-fat yogurt weight fast. We get more of the Elaine and George magic here. I love how Elaine refuses to lie for him. I mean, I can see her point. This is a dumbass thing he's done, and she doesn't want to participate. But as we know, she ultimately does. Everything with the kid Matthew is perfect. I remember seeing this episode when it aired and just laughing so hard at the part where Jerry calls him a little piece of shit. I mean, it's so funny. There is something funny to little kids being insulted. I know this sounds weird. And look, I know I'm a mom, but I don't think children are above being mocked and humiliated. I just don't. Within reason, of course. But something like this is perfect. Like, yeah, this kid's being a total nightmare and destroying Jerry's property. So he is a little piece of shit. And then George and Elaine just throwing stuff all over the place. It's just so shocking that apparently their limbs are like spasming out of control, like George's fake spasm. I don't know. It's so over the top, but also so funny. All right, the next scene, we're at the lab. Kramer and Cheryl enter a darkened lab after hours, and Kramer has some yogurt he's eating. She lights a Bunsen burner for romantic ambiance. He asks if she wants some of his yogurt. She takes a bite and asks if it's non-fat. You tell me. Is the verdict in yet? Apparently it's not. And Kramer says, well, in case there's a tie. Kramer just smushes his face violently into hers. I mean, it's technically a kiss, but geez, relax, Kramer. I think it's to show passion, but man, it's like those old black and white movies when they show the kiss between the main characters. It's always so face smushy and it looks very hard and just not pleasant at all. So I don't know. Kramer kisses like that. An old Cary Grant movie or something. As he's violently pushing his face into hers, he also kicks this rolling stool and it hits the wall and we see a vial of blood pour into another vial marked Giuliani. The next scene, we are at the yogurt shop on Lloyd and Elaine's date. Elaine is reluctantly telling Lloyd what she knows about George's injury, but then she is quick to change the subject to Lloyd's job as an advisor to Dinkins. And she tells him, if she were running for mayor, one of her campaign themes would be to have everyone wear name tags. People would be a lot friendlier. It'd be like living in a small town. Lloyd says, oh, maybe I'll mention it to him. Elaine is so flattered. Wow. They get up to leave and put their arms around each other. But when Lloyd gets his arm around Elaine, he sort of looks behind and makes a face. My take on this scene, we start the scene out with nervous Elaine lying about George's injury to Lloyd. And I like that we start the scene with this. It kicks it off in such a funny way. We know George really wants her to keep up the lie for him. And even though she refused at Jerry's place, she does have an allegiance to George in her heart. So I think it's fitting that she does do this. And I've said it before, but I love JLD's performance as nervous Elaine. All the nervous tics that Elaine does, the sort of dry swallowing and the clearing her throat. It's so funny. Another thing I love about the delivery of sort of nervous Elaine is that we sort of get to see her do it in a way where you can tell she's just trying to get it out and get it out of the way so that she can change the subject. So I really love the shift in energy we see when she goes into Lloyd's job and how interested she is in that. Elaine's reaction to Lloyd saying he'd mention her name tag idea to Mayor Dinkins, it's so cute. That wide smile and the wow. She just feels like so proud. Okay, and Lloyd's a fucking jackass. Who makes a face like that? You are better off without this idiot, Elaine. Trust me. All right, next we are at Jerry's apartment. Elaine's so depressed. It's been 3 days and Lloyd hasn't called her. And she thinks it's because he thinks she's too fat. Jerry's like, he said you're too fat? No, Elaine saw his face when he put his arm around her. And then apparently they went back to his apartment and she sat in one of his chairs and it broke. Lloyd said, boy, you're a lot of woman. Kramer enters and asks about the yogurt. Well, they haven't gotten the results yet, but he's expecting it any time. Well, Kramer says, I wouldn't get your hopes up. And then Kramer changes the subject about, did you hear about that Dinkins? He proposed this whole name tag idea. Elaine looks so proud. But as Kramer goes on about how this has made him the laughingstock and it could cost him the election, she's not so proud. She can tell she's a little bit worried about that. The phone rings. It's the lab calling with the results. Oh, really? Jerry hangs up. Well, the yogurt verdict is in. Fat! Oh, and I meant to bring this up in the scene where Kramer and Cheryl are at the lab on their date. Why would Cheryl ask him non-fat? Like, why would she expect him to know? I mean, it was a little thing I wanted to mention and I forgot to, but I just think that's bizarre that she would ask him. It's like, well, the yogurt has been in, like, you guys are testing it for that purpose. Why would he know? Anyway, just something that bothered me. All right, my take on this scene, though, I'm going to begin this take where I left off my last take. Elaine, you are better off. George was right. Lloyd is a jerk. All right, and so with what Elaine describes here, this is one of those times where I wish they would have shown instead of told. I want to see Elaine break Lloyd's chair. And JLD would have killed that physical comedy. My God, what a wasted opportunity. I really think they should have shown that moment because how funny would that be in the hands of Julie Louis-Dreyfus? I mean, it would have been brilliant. Okay, so not only does Elaine get insulted by Lloyd on the date, but then her name tag idea is totally mocked by Kramer and Jerry. Not that they know it's her idea, but anyway, like she's just getting humiliated and insulted this entire episode. And I've been thinking about this idea, her idea about name tags in New York City and whether I like it or not. And I've come to the conclusion that I don't like it. I like Elaine's intention with the name tags. Perhaps it would make people friendlier. But I'm thinking about this in 2022, and I can see this whole name tag idea, if this was ever introduced, it would devolve into something political, it's my freedom, my name, you don't get to know my name, whatever it is. But I kind of agree with that too. I'm like, I don't want people knowing my name unless I want you to know my name. So sorry, Elaine, pretty stupid idea. All right, next we are at the doctor's office. George is at the Dinkins provided doctor's appointment, and this doctor sniffs him out right away. George is scamming him, and he's pretty annoyed by it, pretty angry. But George stays true to his lie, and the doc's like, whatever, get out of my office. And as George leaves, he slams his elbow on the doctor's desk. All right, next we're at Jerry's apartment. Elaine wants to go down to that yogurt shop. We need to confront them. Jerry's not so sure. This could be a massive conspiracy that goes really deep. Then he gets distracted by the TV and tells Kramer to turn it up. There's a news story about how Giuliani's physical revealed a 375 cholesterol count, which is off the charts. And in another development, Lloyd Braun has been fired as Dinkins' advisor. It seems he was responsible for the name tag fiasco. Then apparently they cut to Giuliani's headquarters for a press conference where Rudy Giuliani says he was shocked by the news of his cholesterol and that he's been doing everything the same. He does, however, indulge in frozen yogurt every now and then, but it's non-fat. Jerry is shocked. They got Giuliani and he doesn't even know it. Elaine says to Kramer, now look what you've done. Jerry says, I'm going to call Giuliani's headquarters. All right, next we're at the Costanza's house. They are also watching the same news story, and George is just ecstatic about how Lloyd is getting fired. Of course he is. Name tags. What kind of an idiot thinks that would be a good idea? Well, of course, Frank and Estelle like it. I don't think it's such a bad idea. George has a real arm spasm this time and hits the lamp next to him. I thought you said it stopped. And George explains, I hit it on the desk in the doctor's office. I don't know why. I love this little moment of panic with George. And Estelle just shuts him up. The press conference is starting. We cut to the press conference and Giuliani shares the disturbing news they've just received about yogurt being sold as non-fat all over the city, but it actually has fat, and that if he's elected, he's going to put a stop to that. All right, next we are at the yogurt shop. All four of them are sitting down at a table and super disgusted by this new, actually non-fat yogurt. It says it's disgusting. They can't even eat it. Newman is in the back. Hey, Jerry, thanks a lot. I hope you're happy. And Jerry says it wasn't good for him. It had fat in it. I don't care. I was enjoying it. Elaine reads an article from the newspaper talking about how the lab screwed up Giuliani's cholesterol count, but that the non-fat yogurt scandal electrified the voters and swept him into office. So Jerry says, wow, the yogurt won him the election. Elaine wonders what happened at that lab. Kramer's like, yeah, I wonder too. He fucked it all up. Newman storms out. He can't eat the yogurt. Then Matthew comes over to Jerry and says, thanks for ruining my daddy's business, you fat fuck. And my take is, wow, what a perfect ending. All right, I'm going to take a quick break, and I will see you on the other side. When I say rico, let me guess, you say suave. If you are of a certain age, that brings up some pretty sweet Latin hip-hop memories from the 90s. Rapper and singer Gerardo doesn't make music anymore, but you can still enjoy his rich smoothness in another way. Frozen yogurt. The Gerardo flavor is a revelation to the world of froyo. It's a celebration of some of Ecuador's largest imports: coffee, cocoa, and of course, Gerardo. Trust me, this froyo is as luscious as Gerardo's long curly locks. Now, along with his clever lyrics, Gerardo was known for his washboard abs, so we've made Gerardo-flavored froyo completely non-fat. We know Gerardo, a self-proclaimed gigolo, would appreciate that. Next time you visit your local grocer's freezer, be sure to toss a pint of Gerardo-flavored froyo into your cart. For a limited time, you can receive a free copy of Gerardo's CD, Mo Ritmo, with each purchase. Maybe even 2 or 3 copies. The label has a surplus. Gerardo-flavored froyo. Remind yourself who Gerardo is. And we're back. There were quite a few extras for this episode, but nothing was really worth mentioning. Most of it was about how this episode aired 2 days after the mayoral election. So they had to prepare quite a bit for who the winner would be. So there was Dinkins versus Giuliani. So they had all these contingencies. They had filmed every scene where they mentioned Dinkins with mentioning Giuliani. So it was mostly about that. But in the notes about nothing, there was a JLD quote. And I have to say, these JLD quotes are very kind of one note, especially when she's just speaking about her character, Elaine. And this is no different. This quote is in response to why JLD would never want to be friends with Elaine. Quote, Elaine is kind of nuts. She looks like a stable character because she's up there with psychopaths like George and Kramer. In fact, she's cuckoo. She has a tendency to move in all these directions and spin out of control. So I would be friends with her, but only from a distance. JLD is very hard on Elaine. All right, moving on to Contributor Corner. Greg sent in some thoughts this week, and this is what Greg had to say. Okay. This is probably my favorite episode of the entire series, or at the very least, it's tied with the smelly car and the big salad. I can't not submit my thoughts this week, and I have a lot to say. We get excellence from all four, plus a bit of the Costanzas and Newman. It's just all around wonderful. Well, that's a good setup. All right, let's get into Greg's glowing review of this episode. He says, I love the quick back and forth between George and Elaine about tasting each other's ice cream. Well, it's frozen yogurt, Greg, sorry. While George says exactly what I would say in that situation, oh, you want to taste mine, the immediacy of Elaine turning angry is what makes me laugh so hard. It's like she hates this guy, and as soon as she has an opportunity to be mad at him, she's going to take it. I don't think there is a pairing of actors in a series in TV history that I find more funny. Exactly, that shift that happens so fast where she gets so angry. You know what? Let's just forget it. Oh, it's so much fun. And I completely agree. Such a great pairing. Greg goes on to say, another reason I love this one so much is the use of the bleeped swearing. While it's a cheap comedy device, I like that it shows that people do actually swear in real life, and that's never seen on network TV, so to hear it bleeped instead of avoided makes it feel more real and therefore more funny. Kind of like Elaine stuck on the subway with her interior monologue saying, motherfucker! It will get a laugh out of me every time. I agree. I didn't really mention this before, but the bleeping of it was discussed at length, of course, with not only just the writers, but also the network and how they would handle it. And I thought this was interesting. And I do remember this from probably, I don't know, being nerdy about Seinfeld forever. But they don't say the real word fuck or shit. Was it flick or something that would look the same? But of course they don't want a child swearing. And then also just for standards and practices, they just didn't want to take the risk of them swearing on set or just have a recorded version of the swearing. So they had to actually use similar words, but of course still using the bleeping. But yeah, it's such an effective way. And I think that's why I have such a vivid memory of watching this for the first time. It was so different. You never, ever heard that on network television. So yeah, just another groundbreaking thing this series did. Greg's next thought. I like that we get to see smitten kitten Elaine when she meets Lloyd Braun. I like the premise of Elaine liking someone that George hates. He pushes her to back his lie later, and she fights him on it, yet still does it on her date. What a pal she is, even to this friend she hates. I know, and I pointed that out too. Look, it's a love-hate relationship between George and Elaine. She can't stand the fact that she's doing this. She's lying to Lloyd. But at the same time, like I said, whether she likes it or not, she does have an allegiance to George. Right, moving on, Greg says, Kramer has some good bits too, and I like how blatantly he points out that both Jerry and Elaine have gained weight. He has no tact, which is my favorite thing about his character. And the reaction of Elaine to race to find where the bathroom scale is makes for a funny moment between her and Jerry. Yeah, it's just what we love about Kramer. It's exactly who he is, and of course he'd be the one to point it out. Greg goes on to say, another factor that makes this episode one of my all-time best is the Costanzas. They are just that bleeping good that even 1 or 2 scenes with them makes an episode even better. I know this is an Elaine Bennis podcast, but if you ever want to do one on Frank and Estelle, I am in. Oh, that would be a good one. I know they make every episode they're in like 200% better. And I'm talking about episodes that are already great. So you can just imagine when they're included, it just takes it to a new level. All right, Greg's next thought. JLD does a noticeable thing for multiple scenes here where she grabs at her turkey waddle. I don't know what this part of the chin or neck is called, as if she's feeling for the fat. It's an interesting choice, which feels subtle yet genuine in showing that she's very concerned about the fact that she has gained this 7 pounds. I liked this too. I wondered if it was direction or something that JLD brought herself. Either way, it's just, I think, for those of us, and I am one of these people, when I gain weight, it shows in my face like right away. I wish that wasn't the case. And I'm sure people were like, oh my God, it shows in my butt right away. I wish that wasn't the case. But like, I would rather it show in my butt than my face. But yeah, I think it's so relatable. Like you kind of like the double chin is very feared and, not looked at as attractive in any sense. So yeah, I can relate. And I also think it was a really good choice for her to do that. Greg goes on to say, my favorite Elaine moment is when she's recanting her date with Lloyd and she is near tears talking about how the chair broke. How could this even happen? She is so tiny that 7 added pounds would still put her lighter than 95% of the adult population. I'd be more judgmental about where he buys his shitty furniture than the fact that she broke one. And then she says that he said, boy, you're a lot of woman. Does she want to be with someone like that? Probably not. But it also preyed on her self-esteem because she's so not a heavy woman. So it's as if she's more upset at the false opinion of her being fat than the fact that this guy is judging her for it. It's reminiscent of when she was falsely accused of having BO. She doesn't normally, so she doesn't want to be perceived as being so. Yeah, I didn't really get into this either, but obviously Elaine and Jerry don't look fat at all. But we're just supposed to believe that apparently they have put on all this weight. Yeah, exactly. Fuck Lloyd. I mean, who says that? You're a lot of woman. And that is another reason I'd want to see that instead of hearing about it. Because, yeah, what kind of chair was this? What kind of chair breaks under the weight of a tiny woman? Yeah, Lloyd is a cheapskate and buys like, I don't know, shitty, like, maybe he has lawn furniture in his house. I don't know, but what the hell? It's all just so upsetting and way less than our Elaine deserves. So like I said, she is better off without stupid Lloyd Braun. All right, Greg's next thought. I must say this episode contains my favorite guest star lines. I love when Matthew's mother says, where's my fucking cupcake? And then also later, I love when Matthew says, he's a funny fuck. Seriously, this bleeping just cracks me up. Oh, I know. It's just that the placement of those are so well done too. I love that Matthew's mother, I love that she swears, no fucking way. That's the one that always makes me laugh. I love that she says it that way. And then the end of the episode, thanks for ruining my dad's business, you fat fuck. I mean, it's just so well done. And Greg's final thought. I guess the downside of this episode these days is the appearance of pre-hair stain dripping Borat assistant pants unzipping Rudy Giuliani. Not to get political, but watching it now does soil this episode a little bit. Nah, he couldn't even ruin it for me. However, would a lab tell random visitors that they were testing a politician's blood? That seems to be a stretch. Maybe they were testing it to see if he was related to his wife by blood. Ooh, so much Giuliani shade. Well, fuck him. He deserves it. What a fall from grace for that guy. I mean, I don't want to get political either, but yeah, it is weird to see him kind of be, I don't know, somewhat endearing, dare I say, in this episode. And then also in the extras in the inside look for this episode, they were praising him and they were also thankful that he did this because apparently Mayor Dinkins, either they weren't getting back to Seinfeld or he refused outright. I can't remember, but maybe both. But he sort of was like, nah, I'm not interested in being in the show. And I think they even had a hard time kind of clearing using his name and all this stuff. So they were so thankful and just like, gosh, what a great guy Giuliani is that he did this for us in this episode, because apparently all of those press conference scenes that they filmed with him, they literally had to pull him away from his victory party because, again, he won the election on Tuesday. The episode aired on that Thursday. So they were in this mad dash to get everything done and to the network by Wednesday. And apparently in Canada, they would air Seinfeld a day earlier. So they aired it on Wednesday night. So it was just like a crazy mad dash. So that was a lot of what the extras were about, like I said earlier. But yeah, I know. It's just what a fucking joke he is now. And gross. Yeah, that's all I'm going to say about Rudy Giuliani. I don't want to waste any more time talking about him. Thank you so much, Greg, for those thoughts. And what a treat, your favorite episode of the series. That is great. And I admire that you can choose. I have a hard time choosing. I definitely have like top episodes, but man, it's hard for me to pick a favorite. But yeah, this is a really good one. And so I really appreciate you putting together those thoughts. And if you would like to become a contributor to Hot and Heavy, please email me at elainepodcast@gmail.com. That's elainepodcast@gmail.com. And your thoughts could be shared on this podcast. All right, my favorite Elaine moments. I love that initial meeting with Lloyd, that first introduction. I enjoy everything about her performance there. Some good physicality, just she's adorable. And I absolutely love it in this episode. And my final notes. This is an exceptional episode for sure. I love the swearing plot. All the bleeping is fantastic. And George's plot the best. Honestly, the whole investigation into the non-fat yogurt thing is a little meh for me. I don't love it. It's still funny, but of everything in this episode, it's not my favorite. JLD, she gets a lot of screen time, but she's not a part of a lot of the comedy in this episode. She could have done so much more. So with that is my scene swap idea. I would drop the entire Kramer dating the chemist stuff and show more of Elaine's date with Lloyd. And like I said, like I've mentioned many times now, seeing her actually break the chair would have been hilarious. Way better than seeing Kramer crash his face into that poor lady. Oh, I mean, it looks painful. I can't get over how awful that kiss looks. So this is another episode where we get a lot of Elaine on screen, but she doesn't get a lot of the good comedy. It's still a good, solid, substantive plot, but it's not, it's just the comedy part is just not as big as maybe what George gets or Kramer gets. So I wish she just got more comedy along with all that screen time she had. And I think that's all I can say about the non-fat yogurt. Thank you so much for listening, and I will see you next time.